I need to tell you something about Aries that no one else is saying clearly enough. And I need you to understand this now, because we are living through a moment where Aries energy is being activated across the collective in ways we haven't seen in decades. Mars, the ruling planet of Aries, is moving through a configuration that happens once every 36 years. And if you have been feeling an inexplicable restlessness, a tightness in your chest, or a sudden urge to burn down everything that no longer serves you, you are not imagining it. You are feeling the frequency shift. And whether you are an Aries yourself or you have one in your life who has suddenly become more intense, more unpredictable, more impossible to ignore, this is not a coincidence. This is activation. You might think you already know what Aries is about. The ram, the warrior, the Hothied who charges first and thinks later. But that surface-level understanding is exactly what keeps most people from accessing the true power of Aries energy, and it is also why so many Aries individuals spend years feeling misunderstood, labeled as aggressive when they are actually protective, called selfish when they are simply self-preserving, dismissed as impulsive when they are operating from a level of instinctual intelligence most people will never access. Let me be very clear about something. Aries is not just another fire sign. Aries is the first fire, the spark that ignites creation itself. When the zodiac wheel begins, it begins with Aries. And there is a reason for that cosmic ordering. Aries energy is the force that says yes before the question is even fully formed. It is the impulse that moves before the mind can interfere. It is the part of consciousness that refuses to wait for permission, validation, or consensus. And in a world that increasingly demands we shrink, comply, and wait our turn, Aries energy is the antidote we desperately need. But here is what most astrology content will not tell you. Aries is not fearless because they do not feel fear. Aries is fearless because they have made a fundamental decision that fear will not be the thing that stops them. There is a massive difference between those two states. And understanding that difference is the key to understanding why Aries people operate the way they do. They feel everything. The anxiety, the doubt, the vulnerability. They simply refuse to let those feelings dictate their actions. This is not recklessness. This is courage in its purest, most raw form. Have you ever been in a room when an Aries walks in? Even if you did not know their zodiac sign, you felt something shift. The energy changes. Conversations pause. People unconsciously adjust their posture. This is not about physical appearance or social status. This is about presence. Aries carries a frequency that announces I am here right, and that frequency does not ask for space. It creates space. It is the energetic equivalent of a lightning strike, sudden, undeniable, impossible to ignore. And this is where we need to talk about the psychology underneath the archetype. Because Aries is ruled by Mars, the planet of war and primal drive. But Mars is not just about aggression. Mars is about assertion. It is about the fundamental right to exist, to take up space, to claim your territory in this world. Every single person has Mars somewhere in their chart, which means every single person has access to this energy. But Aries has it as their core operating system. It is not something they turn on when needed. It is the baseline frequency they are always broadcasting. Now let me ask you something. Have you noticed that Aries people often seem younger than they are? Not just in appearance, but in energy. There is a quality of eternal newness about them, a refusal to become jaded or resigned. This is because Aries is the baby of the zodiac, not in terms of maturity, but in terms of pure life force. They carry the energy of spring, of seeds breaking through frozen ground, of life insisting on itself against all odds. This is why they can be so exhausting to be around. They are always beginning, always starting, always ready for the next thing before the current thing is even finished. But rather than seeing this as immaturity, we need to recognize it as a specific form of genius. Aries understands something most people spend their entire lives trying to learn, which is that momentum is everything. Hesitation kills more dreams than failure ever will. Overthinking is just fear wearing an intellectual mask, and the window of opportunity is always smaller than you think. So Aries moves. They act. They leap. And yes, sometimes they crash. Sometimes they burn. Sometimes they make spectacular mistakes. But they are never stuck. They are never paralyzed. They are never waiting for someone else to give them permission to live their life. This is the part where I need you to really hear me. If you are someone who has been taught that thinking before acting is always the superior approach, that caution is wisdom and impulsivity is foolishness. You have been programmed with a belief system that serves systems of control, not your actual liberation. I am not saying recklessness is the answer. I am saying that there is a form of intelligence that operates faster than thought, and Aries has direct access to it. It is instinctual intelligence, somatic intelligence, the kind of knowing that lives in your body, not your brain. When an Aries person says, "I just knew I had to do it," they are not being irrational. They are describing a decision-making process that bypassed the slow, analytical mind and went straight to the source. This is the same intelligence that makes a mother lift a car off her child. The same intelligence that makes a soldier run toward danger instead of away from it. The same intelligence that makes an entrepreneur quit their job with no backup plan because something inside them said now. It is not logical. It is primal. And it is almost always right. But he rears the shadow side. And we have to talk about this because pretending Aries energy is all positive does a disservice to everyone. Aries can be selfish. Not in the calculated, manipulative way that some signs can be, but in the way a child is selfish. They want what they want when they want it, and the needs of others can genuinely not occur to them in the moment. This is not malice. This is a kind of tunnel vision that happens when you are so focused on your own forward momentum that peripheral awareness drops away. Aries can bulldoze people without even realizing they're doing it. They can start fires and walk away, leaving others to deal with the aftermath. They can be so focused on the next thing that they forget to honor what they just completed or the people who helped them get there. And this is where the work is for Aries individuals. Not to stop being who they are, but to develop the capacity to see beyond their own immediate experience. To recognize that their intensity, while thrilling to them, can be overwhelming or even traumatic for others. To understand that not everyone operates at their speed, and that does not make those people weak or wrong. It just makes them different. The mature Aries learns to modulate, not to dim their light, but to be more conscious about where they are shining it and who might be getting burned in the process. Does this resonate with you? Can you feel the truth of what I am describing? Whether you are an Aries or you have loved one. Because this is not abstract theory. This is lived experience. This is the texture of what it actually feels like to carry this frequency or to be in relationship with someone who does. Now let me tell you about the gift that Aries brings to the collective, especially right now. We are living in a time of unprecedented uncertainty, systemic collapse, and collective paralysis. Everywhere you look, people are frozen, waiting for more information, waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone else to go first. And into this landscape of hesitation walks Aries energy, and it says, "I will go first. I will take the risk. I will be the one who moves when everyone else is stuck." This is not bravado. This is service. Because someone has to be willing to break the inertia. Someone has to be willing to fail publicly so others can learn from the attempt. Someone has to care more about forward motion than about looking good. Aries is the pioneer, the trailblazer. The one who goes into unpaid territory and comes back with a report. And yes, sometimes that report is "this path does not work." But even that is valuable information. Even that moves the collective forward. This is why Aries people often end up in leadership positions even when they are not seeking them. People instinctively follow someone who knows where they are going, even if that person is making it up as they go along. Confidence is magnetic. Decisiveness is rare, and Aries has both in abundance. But let me be very specific about who benefits most from understanding Aries energy right now. If you are a cardinal sign, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. You are feeling this activation most intensely. Cardinal signs are the initiators of the zodiac. The ones who start seasons, who begin cycles, who set things in motion. And right now, all 4 cardinal signs are being asked to step into a new level of leadership, to take responsibility for initiating the changes they want to see rather than waiting for someone else to do it. If you are a cardinal sign and you have been feeling an almost unbearable pressure to act, to do something, this is why. You are being cosmically pushed to embody your initiative power. And if you are a fire sign, Leo, Sagittarius, you are being given an unfair advantage right now. Fire energy is being amplified across the board. Your natural optimism, your willingness to take risks, your ability to inspire others, these qualities are exactly what the collective needs. But with that advantage comes responsibility. You cannot just burn bright and burn out. You have to learn to sustain your fire, to tend it, to make sure it is warming people rather than consuming them. Now let me take you deeper into something most people completely miss about Aries energy. And this is where we move from surface level astrology into genuine psychological transformation. Aries is not just about action. Aries is about identity formation through action. Let me say that again because this is critical. Aries discovers who they are by doing things, not by thinking about things. This is the opposite of how most people are taught to approach self-discovery. We are told to journal, to reflect, to analyze ourselves into clarity. And while those practices have value, they are not the Aries path. Aries finds themselves in the arena, not in the monastery. Think about what this actually means. An Aries person does not sit around wondering if they are brave. They put themselves in a situation that requires bravery and then they find out. They do not theorize about their capacity for leadership. They step into a leadership role and discover their abilities in real time. This is learning by doing taken to its absolute extreme. And it produces a very specific kind of self-knowledge. It is embodied knowledge, cellular knowledge. The kind of knowing that cannot be taken away from you because it is literally written into your nervous system through direct experience. And this is why Aries people often seem so certain of themselves even when they are young. It is not arrogance, though it can look like that from the outside. It is that they have already tested themselves in ways their peers have not. While other people their age were still deciding whether to take the risk, Aries already took it, failed, learned it, and moved on to the next thing. They have more data points, more reference experiences, more proof of their own resilience. So when they say I can do that, they are not guessing. They are extrapolating from a pattern of evidence that they have been building since childhood. But here is where it gets psychologically complex. And this is something I need you to really sit with. Because Aries is so action-oriented, so focused on forward momentum, they often do not process their experiences as they are having them. They move through things so fast that the emotional integration happens on a delay, sometimes years later. This is why you will meet Aries people who seem completely fine after a traumatic event, and then suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, they fall apart. It is not that they were faking being okay. It is that they genuinely were okay in the moment because they were in action mode, in survival mode, in warrior mode. The breakdown comes later when the adrenaline finally stops and the body says okay, now we need to deal with what just happened. This delayed processing is one of the most misunderstood aspects of Aries psychology. People see it as emotional immaturity or avoidance. But it is actually a highly functional survival mechanism. When you are the person who runs toward danger, who takes the hit, who goes first into the unknown, you cannot afford to be processing your feelings in real time. You have to compartmentalize. You have to keep moving. The processing has to wait, and for Aries, it often does wait, sometimes too long. So if you are an Aries and you have ever wondered why you can handle a crisis better than anyone else, but then completely fall apart over something small weeks later, this is why. Your nervous system is finally catching up. Your body is finally saying we need to discharge this energy. We need to complete this cycle. We need to feel what we did not have time to feel when it was actually happening. And the work for you is not to judge yourself for this delay. The work is to build in intentional processing time so the backlog does not become overwhelming. Now let me talk about Aries in relationship. Because this is where the most confusion and pain ends to happen. Aries people are often accused of being bad at relationships, of being too independent, too selfish, too focused on their own agenda, and there is some truth to this. But not in the way most people think. Aries is not bad at relationships. Aries is bad at relationships that require them to be smaller than they are. Aries is bad at relationships that demand constant compromise, endless negotiation, perpetual consideration of someone else's feelings before their own, not because they do not care about other people, but because that level of self-monitoring is antithetical to their core nature. Aries needs to be able to move spontaneously, to change direction without a committee meeting, to follow an impulse without having to justify it. And in a culture that defines healthy relationships as constant communication, mutual decision-making, and emotional enmeshment, Aries is going to look dysfunctional. But what if the problem is not Aries? What if the problem is a relationship model that pathologizes autonomy and mistakes independence for disconnection? Here is what Aries actually needs in relationship. They need a partner who is secure enough in themselves that they do not need Aries to be their emotional regulator. They need someone who has their own life, their own passions, their own sense of purpose. So that when Aries goes off on one of their adventures, it is not experienced as abandonment. They need someone who can match their intensity without trying to control it, who can celebrate their wins without feeling threatened, who can handle their occasional selfishness without making it mean they aren't loved. And when Aries finds that kind of partnership, they are actually incredibly loyal, not in the clingy, codependent way, but in the "I will go to war for you" way. Aries loyalty is fierce, protective, and action-based. They do not show love through words or constant reassurance. They show love by showing up when it matters, by defending you when you are attacked, by believing in you when you do not believe in yourself. If you need someone to hold your hand through every difficult emotion, Aries is probably not your person. But if you need someone to help you remember your own strength, to push you toward your edge, to refuse to let you play small, Aries is exactly who you want in your corner. Does this make sense to you? Can you see how what looks like relationship dysfunction from one angle is actually just a different relationship operating system? Because this is crucial. We have to stop pathologizing difference and start recognizing that there are multiple valid ways to do intimacy, and Aries represents one of them. Now let me address something that is happening right now in the collective that directly involves Aries energy, and this is where the urgency of this moment becomes clear. We are in a period of massive systemic breakdown. Institutions that we thought were permanent are crumbling. Structures that provided stability are revealing themselves to be hollow. And into this chaos, there are two possible responses. One is to freeze, to retreat, to try to hold on to what is left of the old world. The other is to build, to create, to pioneer the new. And that second response is pure Aries energy. Aries is the sign of new beginnings. But not the kind of new beginnings that come after everything is perfectly prepared. Aries begins in the middle of the mess. Aries begins before they are ready. Aries begins because waiting is not an option. And right now, we need that energy more than ever. We need people who are willing to start businesses without knowing if they will succeed. We need people who are willing to create community without institutional support. We need people who are willing to try new models of living, working, and relating without a guarantee that it will work out. This is not recklessness. This is pioneering, and there is a massive difference. Recklessness is action without awareness. Pioneering is action despite uncertainty. Aries understands that uncertainty is not a reason to wait. Uncertainty is the permanent condition of being alive, and if you wait for certainty, you will wait forever. So Aries moves, and in moving, they create the path that others will eventually follow. But here is what I need you to understand about the cost of being a pioneer. Pioneers get arrows in their back. Pioneers get criticized, misunderstood, and often ostracized, because they are doing something that has not been done before. There is no social proof, no validation, no evidence that it will work. They are operating on faith, instinct, and sheer will. And most people cannot handle that level of uncertainty, so they project their fear onto the pioneer. They call them crazy, irresponsible, naive, and the pioneer has to be strong enough to keep moving anyway. This is the loneliness of Aries energy, not the loneliness of having no one around, but the loneliness of being the only one who sees the possibility, the only one who is willing to take the risk, the only one who cares more about the future than about fitting in with the present. And if you are an Aries, or if you carry strong Aries placements in your chart, you know this loneliness intimately. You know what it feels like to be excited about something and have everyone around you try to talk you out of it. You know what it feels like to take a leap and have people wait for you to fail so they can say "I told you so." You know what it feels like to be punished for your courage by people who are too afraid to access their own. And the work here is not to become bitter. The work is not to stop pioneering. The work is to find your people, to find the other pioneers, the other risk takers, the other people who understand that safety is not the highest value. Because when Aries energy connects with other Aries energy, or with people who respect and celebrate that frequency, something magical happens. There is permission. There is amplification. There is a sense of finally, someone who gets it. Let me tell you about the 3 zodiac signs that have the most natural affinity with Aries energy right now, and why this matters. First, Leo. Leo and Aries are both fire signs, but they express fire differently. Aries is the spark. Leo is the sustained flame. When these two energies come together, Aries provides the initiation and Leo provides the follow-through. Aries starts the revolution. Leo builds the kingdom. If you are a Leo, you are being called right now to take the raw courage of Aries and turn it into something lasting, something that can inspire others, something that can become a legacy. Second, Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the 3rd fire sign. And where Aries is the warrior and Leo is the king, Sagittarius is the philosopher. Sagittarius takes the action of Aries and asks, what does this mean? What is the larger truth here? What can we learn from this that applies beyond this specific situation? If you are a Sagittarius, you are being called to be the translator of Aries energy, to help people understand why the risks being taken right now are not just personal but collective. Not just practical but spiritual. Third, and this might surprise you, Libra. Libra is the opposite sign of Aries on the zodiac wheel, and opposites in astrology are not enemies. They are completion points. Libra is the sign of relationship, diplomacy, and balance. Where Aries says I, Libra says we. Where Aries acts, Libra considers. And right now, Libra is being asked to bring their gifts to the table in service of Aries-initiated change. Because change without relationship is just chaos. Action without consideration is just destruction. Aries needs Libra to help them see the impact of their choices on others. And Libra needs Aries to help them stop deliberating and start doing. If you are one of these 3 signs, you are holding a golden ticket right now. You have an unfair advantage in this moment because your natural frequency is aligned with what the collective needs. But with that comes responsibility. You cannot just use this energy for personal gain. You have to use it in service of something larger. You have to be willing to be the example, the template, the proof of concept that a different way is possible. And if you are not one of these signs but you have been feeling the call to step into more Aries-like energy, to be braver, to take more risks, to stop waiting for permission, I want you to know that you can access this frequency regardless of your sun sign. Because we all have Aries somewhere in our chart. We all have Mars somewhere in our chart. And right now, those placements are being activated. So the question is not, do I have access to this energy? The question is, am I willing to use it? Let me give you the action plan. Because understanding Aries is only valuable if it translates into something you can actually do with this information. And what you need to do right now depends entirely on where you are in your relationship with Aries energy. If you are an Arian, or if you have Aries rising or Mars in Aries, your work right now is not to become more. You are already enough. Your work is to become more conscious. To develop what I call strategic impulsivity. This means you still move fast. You still trust your instincts. You still take the leap. But you add one crucial step. Before you act, you ask yourself one question. Not, is this the right decision? Because you will never know that in advance. Not, what will people think? Because that is not your concern. The question is, am I moving towards something or am I running away from something? Because Aries energy can be used for both. And they feel identical in the body. They both create that same rush of adrenaline. That same sense of urgency. That same need to move now. But the outcomes are completely different. Moving towards something is generative. It creates. It builds. It opens new possibilities. Running away from something is reactive. It is still being controlled by the thing you are trying to escape. And here is how you tell the difference. When you are moving towards something, you feel expansion in your chest. When you are running away from something, you feel contraction. When you are moving towards something, you can articulate what you are creating, even if you do not know how you will create it. When you are running away from something, all you can articulate is what you do not want anymore. This distinction will save you years of wasted energy. The second piece of work for Aries individuals is to build what I call completion capacity. You are brilliant at starting things. You are terrible at finishing them. And I am not telling you this to shame you. I am telling you this because it is costing you power. Every unfinished project, every abandoned commitment, every half-completed idea is a leak in your energetic system. It is not that you need to finish everything you start. That is unrealistic and it goes against your nature. But you need to develop the ability to consciously complete things. To create closure. To say this chapter is done rather than just moving on to the next thing and leaving a trail of open loops behind you. Here is a practice that will change everything for you. At the end of each month, make a list of everything you started that month. Not everything you did. Everything you started. New projects. New relationships. New commitments. New ideas you got excited about. Then ask yourself, which of these am I actually going to complete? And which of these was just an impulse that served its purpose by existing for a moment? Give yourself permission to consciously release the things you are not going to finish. Say out loud, I started this. I learned what I needed to learn from it, and now I am letting it go. This is not failure. This is completion. And it will free up massive amounts of energy that you have been unconsciously spending on guilt and self-judgment. Now, if you are not an Aries but you have an Aries in your life, whether it is a partner, a friend, a family member, or a colleague, your work is completely different. Your work is to stop trying to slow them down. Stop trying to make them more careful, more considerate, more like you. Because what you are actually doing when you do that is asking them to betray their nature. And no one can sustain that long term. Instead, your work is to learn how to be in relationship with intensity without trying to control it. This means you have to get very honest about your own relationship with risk. Because if you are someone who needs certainty, who needs plans, who needs to know how things are going to turn out before you commit, you are going to experience Aries energy as threatening. Not because Aries is trying to threaten you, but because their comfort with uncertainty triggers your discomfort with it. And you will unconsciously try to manage your anxiety by managing them. You will disguise your fear as concern. You will call your need for control being responsible. And Aries will feel suffocated. And they will either leave or they will shut down. And either way, the relationship will die. So here is what you do instead. You develop your own relationship with courage. You take your own risks. You build your own capacity to move without knowing the outcome. Not because you need to become an Aries, but because you need to stop outsourcing your sense of allegiance to them. Because that is often what is really happening in these dynamics. The more cautious person is living vicariously through the Aries person's boldness, and then resenting them for it, and then trying to control them to manage the anxiety that comes from watching someone live so freely. If you can do your own work, if you can build your own courage, then you can be in relationship with Aries energy without needing to change it. You can celebrate their wins without feeling diminished. You can support their risks without needing to protect them from failure. You can give them space without experiencing it as abandonment. And that is when the relationship becomes genuinely generative. Because you are both bringing your full selves rather than one person shrinking so the other can expand. Let me tell you about the spiritual dimension of Aries energy. Because this is where we move from psychology into something deeper. Aries is the sign of the spiritual warrior. And I need you to understand what that actually means. A spiritual warrior is not someone who fights against darkness. A spiritual warrior is someone who fights for light. They are not motivated by hatred or revenge or the need to destroy. They are motivated by love, by vision, by the absolute conviction that something better is possible, and they are willing to sacrifice their comfort, their safety, their reputation, their relationships, everything, in service of that vision. This is why Aries energy can feel so confronting. Because when you are in the presence of someone who has made that level of commitment, it reveals everywhere you are still hedging your bets, everywhere you are still playing it safe, everywhere you are still waiting for someone else to give you permission to fully live. Aries does not wait for permission. Aries takes permission, and in taking it, they give everyone around them permission to do the same. This is the gift. This is the transmission. This is why Aries people are so magnetic even when they are difficult. Because they are walking proof that you can just decide to be free. But here is the shadow side of the spiritual warrior archetype, and we have to name this clearly. Aries can become addicted to the fight. They can start to define themselves by what they are against rather than what they are for. They can get so used to being the underdog, the rebel, the one who stands alone, that they unconsciously create conflict even when it is not necessary. Because conflict feels like allevance to them. Struggle feels like purpose. And peace, actual peace, can feel like death. If you are an Aries and you have noticed that your life always seems to involve some kind of battle, some kind of opposition, some kind of struggle, you need to ask yourself a very hard question. Am I creating this because it is necessary? Or am I creating this because it is familiar? Because there is a version of Aries energy that is so identified with being the warrior that it cannot imagine what it would be to just be at peace. And that version of Aries will sabotage their own success. Will pick fights that do not need to be fought. Will burn down what they built just to have something to rebuild. Not because they are self-destructive, but because they do not know who they are without the struggle. The mature Aries learns to redirect their warrior energy toward creation rather than destruction. They learn that the real battle is not against external enemies, but against their own limitations, their own fears, their own patterns. They learn that the most courageous thing they can do is not to fight but to build, to create something that lasts, to commit to something beyond the initial rush of excitement, to stay when every instinct is telling them to go. And this is the initiation that Aries is being called into right now. Not to stop being warriors, but to become builders. Not to stop being brave, but to become wise. Not to stop moving fast, but to move with intention. Because the world does not just need people who can start revolutions. The world needs people who can sustain them. And that requires a different kind of strength, a different kind of courage, a different kind of fire. Let me tell you what is possible when Aries energy is fully mature and fully expressed. You get leaders who inspire not through force but through example. You get creators who do not just have ideas but who actually bring them into form. You get warriors who fight for something rather than against something. You get pioneers who do not just blaze trails, but who turn those trails into roads that others can follow. You get people who are so secure in their own power that they do not need to dominate anyone else. You get people who are so clear in their purpose that they do not need external validation. You get people who are so committed to their vision that they will do whatever it takes. for as long as it takes, without burning out or giving up. This is the Aries we need right now. Not the immature Aries who starts things and walks away. Not the wounded Aries who creates conflict to feel alive. But the initiated Aries who understands that their fire is sacred, that their courage is a gift, that their willingness to go first is a form of service. And if you are an Aries, this is your calling. This is your work. This is why you are here. Now let me bring this full circle and tell you why this matters so urgently right now. We are at a collective crossroads. The old systems are dying. The new systems have not yet been born. And in this liminal space, there is a massive temptation to freeze, to wait, to see what happens. But waiting is not neutral. Waiting is a choice, and is a choice that guarantees you will be shaped by whatever emerges rather than being one of the people who shapes what emerges. Aries energy is the antidote to this paralysis. Aries energy says, I will not wait to see what happens. I will make something happen. I will be one of the people who builds the future rather than one of the people who complains about it. And this is not just for Aries individuals. This is for anyone who is willing to access that frequency, to embody that courage, to take that risk. You do not need to know how it is all going to work out. You do not need to have all the answers. You do not need to wait until you are ready, because you will never feel ready. You just need to start. You just need to move. You just need to take the first step and trust that the path will reveal itself as you walk it. This is the Aries way. This is the pioneer way. This is the only way forward. So here is what I want you to do. I want you to identify one thing you have been waiting to start. One thing you have been telling yourself you will do when the time is right. When you have more money, when you have more support, when you feel more confident. And I want you to start it this week. Not perfectly, not with a complete plan, not with everyone's approval. Just start it. Take one action, no matter how small, that moves you in that direction. Because that action will create momentum. And momentum is everything. If you are an Aries, you already know this. You have always known this. But maybe you needed permission to trust yourself again. Maybe you needed someone to tell you that your way of moving through the world is not wrong. It is just different. Maybe you needed to hear that your intensity is not too much, strange light. It is exactly what is needed. So here is your permission. Go, move, create, build, fight for what matters, and do not apologize for taking up space. Because the world needs you to take up all the space you actually need. If you are not an Aries but you have been feeling the call to step into more courage, more action, more alevines, this is your moment. The universe is supporting bold moves right now. The cosmic weather is favorable for risk-taking. The collective field is hungry for pioneers. So stop waiting. Stop preparing. Stop asking for signs. This is the sign. Your restlessness is the sign. Your dissatisfaction with playing small is the sign. Your sense that there has to be more than this is the sign. Listen to it. Trust it. Act on it. And if you are someone who loves an Aries, who is in relationship with this energy, your work is to be the ground that allows them to fly. Not to clip their wings out of fear, but to be so solid in yourself that their flight does not threaten you. To celebrate their courage even when it scares you. To trust their instincts even when you do not understand them. To love them not despite their intensity but because of it. Because that intensity is not a flaw. It is their medicine. It is their gift. It is what they came here to give. This is the truth about Aries that no one else is saying clearly enough. Aries is not just a personality type. Aries is a frequency of consciousness. It is the part of the divine that says yes to life. That chooses creation over comfort.